younger generations and people who are truly democratic have to be smart and detailed and really followed up on these situations, because as of now, the way you take away democracy is not as loud and it's not as visible. You're not going to see tanks on the street. You're not going to see people being assassinated. Rather, they'll just use the judicial coup, violence in the courtroom, and political assassination, rather than what happened in the past. The painful memory that we had together during May in South Korea, in Thailand, and in Indonesia. It's not going to be like that anymore, because autocrats are much smarter and they are very, very detailed. They're very discreet in the way they want to cling on to power. So that's why I feel like coming over here and talking to younger generations as well as Democrats to come up with Democrats United against Autocrats Inc. Because for those autocrats, they're personalized politics, political dynasties that is on text basis. They can always text one another what they want to do with neighboring countries and things like that. But for us, Democrats, it's once in every 20 years we meet, So I feel like I should be traveling and meeting people with a like-minded, how to stop this democratic backsliding around the world as well as here. And I don't want to reinvent the wheel. If something that is great happened in Latin America, then yeah, maybe I want to take whatever happened to Chile and apply it to this region and become a community like how FPCi wanted to do it.
Why do you think this democratic backsliding around the world is happening?
Several reasons. I feel like I quote one of the Harvard professors. I think right after COVID, and then people started to see uncontrollable unemployment as well as rising cost. And they started to blame it on, immigration, and starting to blame it on foreigners and things like that, so that people feel really angry. They were following elections, about 19 elections, only 2 incumbents stayed. The remaining of the elections just went to the challenger because people were so angry about it. And also I felt like the conservative parties, the conservative parties in many, many countries failed to represent their own people. So once the existing conservative parties cannot represent their own people, that's when the far-right ideology starts to come in. And when, the economy is really bad and great power rivalry starts to come, and it's very easy to blame someone else for rising cost of living in Germany, blame international students for rising cost of living in Australia. So that's why you started to see all around the world that the right-wing thinking is starting to arise, and because of many, many combinations, and the world is changing. The better question is, what do we do about it? How do Democrats in America offer an alternative America to what's happening now? How do SDP in Germany offer an alternative Germany? How does my party number 3, because number 2 is already dissolved, number 1 is already dissolved, is proposing an alternative Thailand, where it's more inclusive and diversity is an asset and not a liability. Otherwise, they will see, okay, the isolation is better, thinking inward is better. You don't have to think about multi-polarity or anything. Just this country first, that country first, and that country first all the time, because that's the new normal of the world nowadays.
You touched upon this before already. The topic of today's discussion is democratic resilience, and one of the topic is the role of civil society. You mentioned before, now the battle is not seeing tanks on the street, and it's mostly in the courtroom, on the legislation table, within the system. And we had that history of 1998 of reform, which Thailand might not have and still struggling on that. But our part of the story, civil society has always been a strong pillar of Indonesian democracy, and I believe that's also happening in Thailand and many countries. But today's the challenge is different. It's within the system. We might have this democratic system, but procedural-wise, but implementation-wise, there are many forms of manipulations of the system, institutions, laws are as well weaponized here. Then where civil society can play most effective part?
Civil society is like shock absorber of democracy. Civil society is something that needs to work when the institutions stop working. So without any civil society organization, when a shock happens, democratic resilience, it means a system that can renew itself and can withstand shocks, and then ability to correct itself. You know, that's what resilience in a nutshell means. And in order for you to absorb the shock of something when it happens, and the ability to provide an informed decision on many issues, and also continuation, because governments come and go, parliaments come and go. But it's a civil society that works on land justice, indigenous rights, gender equality in Thailand, environmental issues. Those are the pillars that provided the shock and as shock absorbing, as well as continuation of the struggle of the marginalized people. So without civil society, it will stop when the government change. You know, but it's a civil society that keeps new governments accountable to the real need of the people. So it's truly crucial. But it's a shrinking space in Thailand, though. I don't know about what it is here in Indonesia. I heard about the uprising a couple of times here, about a military law, as well as change of local election. Dark Indonesia, I can't remember exactly. But I feel like, you know, it's called the control of the agenda. The ability for people to control the agenda of the society is part of a democracy. And you were successful, you know, but for us, we have that kind of voters fatigue and civil society fatigue that we've tried and tried again. And we went to election and we finally won. And then again, you know, we were stripped away of the victory, and we don't know whether we should wait, and instead of, you know, hitting the streets, we should just go to the poll and vote again and bring about change from election. So it's a bit of an iffy situation in Thailand, which I completely understand. It's not easy, especially if it's organic. Obviously, some peaceful assembly can be organized and can be systematically paid for in order for them to show up. But for organic assembly is something that is pretty tiring and dangerous also, which is something I agree that it's part of democracy, but I can't, you know, take responsibility for people's lives and things like that. That's why I chose the other path, which is to wait my time out, return better, and win within the parliamentarian system, which might be slower but more sustainable in a way that, yes, I'll keep winning. The first time I got 80, the second time I got 152, next time I'm going to get 200 and 250. If I keep winning gradually, it will eventually reach a pivot point that finally the time of change has come from within. Yeah.
You mentioned civil society fatigue, and I think that might be also happening in Indonesia, although the civil society keep, you know, lighting up each other's spirit in some ways, but political cynicism toward politicians and governments is very deep among Indonesian public and even younger generation. You mentioned the hashtag of Kabur Aja Dulu, meaning go abroad, and secondly, Indonesia Gelap, the dark Indonesia, and I think it has gotten to a point where this cynicism is towards politicians and government in general. And you in Thailand capture most votes. You earn the trust of the people, and people see that they can rely on you.
what would be your answer for the politicians here and the governments here if they ask for your advice how to earn trust from the people?
Consistency and transparency. It's like that as well. On the question of brain drain, I also get a lot of questions like that. But I feel like, to force Thai talents in New York, in Japan, in Tokyo, in Sydney, in Singapore, in Jakarta to return back to Thailand where the environment is not suitable for them, it's a sin. So I feel like, what I want to, they ask me these questions, like very famous filmmaker in New York from Thailand. It's like, you stay where you are, make yourself happy, make yourself well known. I'm going to do a global map talent, and I know where you are. So whenever the government has a national strategy of what Thailand wants to do, then I know where the talent pipeline is. I'll return to you. But please don't forget Thailand. But there's no need for me to incentivize or pressure you to return and use nationalistic sentiment to make you return because, you'll be nothing in Thailand if you are a pop singer in Korea or a filmmaker in New York or a scientist in Cambridge. So stay where you are, maximize your potential. I know where you are. When I get to govern, this is my policy, this is my strategy, and you become the ambassador of a certain thing. Thank you.
I think that would be the most encouraging message so far that we have heard on this issue. But continue, Mr. Peter.
และมีจุดเด่นกว่านั้นคือไม่เคยคุยโตโอ้อวดทำงานก็ไม่ชอบเอาหน้า